Chocolate? Chocolate! Chocolate!
Hello everybody, Chocolate Guy here, and welcome back to another countdown, and a very special one at that. So the last time I posted a video, I announced I'd be going on a little hiatus, for many different reasons, and I did that, and am ready to make some more videos. So I started working on a list of the top 5 worst episodes of Hey Arnold seasons 1 through 3, but have been having scripting and editing issues with it. Same with my Homer's Night Out review. So I decided to push that back until after 2021 is done and end my first full year of making content on an introspective and positive one. So in this video, I will be talking about my top 10 favorite SpongeBob seasons 1 through 3 episodes. I will do the same for Hey Arnold seasons 1 through 3 in the future, but that will come out after my worst list for those 3 seasons is out as well. This will be a nice culmination of things I previously talked about, giving my final stance on how everything compares with each other, which should be interesting, and answer that question some might have, while also being a transition back into bigger videos in the new year. In this video, I'm going to be messing around with more simple editing involving slides, which you may have seen a template of in previous videos and recordings of myself talking about the episode, so a lot more footage of me on camera than ever before, just talking. It will get around the editing problem, but if I and other people really like this style, I might do it more in the future because of how time-consuming editing was, and was one of the big reasons I couldn't make anything for a while. I just didn't have the time because editing is that time-consuming. This may allow me to start posting videos again more regularly because it will get past that editing problem, but we'll see. I will talk more about the fact that this is the end of my first full year on YouTube and upcoming videos at the end of this one, but most people don't really care about that and just want to see another list. So, after so long of me being gone, let's get into it. So, if you didn't know, I made individual lists about the best episodes of the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob, and I wanted to move on to later seasons, but realized something wasn't quite finished. Pre-first movie SpongeBob is one of the funniest shows ever made, and one of the best cartoons for it, as I've talked about too much on this channel. Even when I made my worst list about these 3 seasons, I had to do a top 5 of all 3 and was pulling hairs making it because there weren't that many bad episodes. Not even enough to fill 5 spots amongst 3 seasons worth of episodes. 2 episodes were okay, and the other 3 weren't that bad. On the other side of things, for each of the 3 best lists, I struggled to make those because there were so many options. So many of the episodes in the first 3 seasons are absolutely fantastic, amazing even. So the ones that won out were truly the best of the best. So with all that said, I got curious where these episodes would stack up compared to each other. These seasons are considered to be the peak of the show. What episodes are the best overall? It's an interesting challenge, and this was one of the hardest lists to make because of those individual season lists were so hard to put together due to episodes being so close in quality. Then these are those actual final episodes from each season being compared. So you may be surprised, especially because I've talked about each of these before, and you may assume something will be higher based on things I've said in the past, but they're not for interesting reasons. Well, you may be surprised because I did go back and forth on everything, even going back on opinions I previously had. This is gonna be a weird one, just like SpongeBob itself. Anyways, everyone knows these seasons are great, you know my thoughts on them, and their best episodes, so let's finally get into what this list is about, the best episodes overall and comparing them. Here is my list of the top 10 best SpongeBob seasons 1 through 3 episodes. Making SpongeBob lists is interesting and a lot harder to make than many other lists. And this is a problem with making lists of the best episodes or worst episodes of any comedy show. But it's at least a little easier with the worst aspect, because if it's not funny, then it fails. But the best is a bit more complicated. Trying to compare episodes that are great because they're just the funniest material and ones that have really good comedy but I love more for other reasons is difficult. It's what I struggled with making all three of the best lists. And while I know most will say that this is a comedy show, comedy wins out. But there are SpongeBob episodes that are great for different reasons, which can be better than just it's the funniest episode that only has comedy as their main selling point. It's the reason why SpongeBob Meets the Strangler and the camping episode, for how funny they are, didn't make my season 3 list over Marine Man and Barnacle Boy 5, which you can consider my honorary number 11. I bring this up because Wet Painters beat that episode out for just being so funny and going further with its concept. It really does cut both ways. It just depends on which aspect causes me to enjoy the episode more. Once again, most comedy shows are like this, but SpongeBob really follows this formula when it comes to how I'm gonna pick my favorite episodes. But this episode was really funny. It has a lot of great jokes, and as I said, it has a very interesting concept it goes very far with, which allows it to barely scrape onto this top 10 amongst other episodes which are funnier or do enough interesting things to beat it out, which is why it's only number 10. But the fact that we're starting this list with such a great episode that everyone really loves and is such a classic for just how amazing it is says so much about the quality of season 1 through 3's episodes and is much less of a put down on Wet Painters. The concept of this episode is so simple, but it works for that reason. The first and second half are so tense in different ways, using that to tell the most perfectly timed jokes, getting the most out of such a simple concept, including its ending. SpongeBob, throughout pretty much its entirety of the first 3 seasons, gets a lot of episodes out of simple concepts, and this is one of the best examples because it's just so funny and it goes so much further to make it one of the best. But what really pushed it over the edge to make this list was that it is one of the funniest of season 3, which is the funniest season of the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob. And for how amazing that season is, it is quite an accomplishment. This episode's sense of timing and pacing, which is far none one of the best of the show comedically, is really fantastic and is the crowning achievement of this episode. So that's why it made the top 10 over competitors. But as I said, there are still funnier episodes, including some more ambitious ones as well, that do beat this one out, and the next one fits both of those categories. Oh man, Graveyard Shift only at number 9? People are probably thinking that I'm underscoring this episode. And maybe I am, but trust me, I do love it. I do, however, think I overpraised this episode a little bit back when I made my season 2 list. No, it is not the funniest of season 2. It doesn't have the most jokes, and while the ones it does tell are insanely funny, I'd say there are other episodes in season 2 that are funnier, including Frankendoodle, which missed this list, and number 8, which I'll talk about in a second. But I still think this episode has all the elements that make the first 2 seasons great at pretty much its best. It has so much fun with its concept and atmosphere. The first half of the episode tells so many good jokes about SpongeBob and Squidward being in the night shift and setting up important details like SpongeBob being afraid of the dark and the hash-slinging slasher story, both of which are hilarious in some of the most memorable scenes and jokes of the show. And this episode smartly uses its atmosphere and tone to have such an incredible contrast with the first and second half, where we slowly build to the hash-slinging slasher being revealed. And through all of this, we get some of the best character interactions between SpongeBob and Squidward in the entire series. This makes the episode such an interesting watch and makes you want to see what will happen, even when you know what is coming, because the episode is just so engaging for all of these reasons. Even so, the episode is a little lower on the list for the same reason it was only number 4 in season 2. It's because there were more ambitious episodes I liked better, including another episode people probably think I'm ranking a little too low, and while I do think it's overrated in a sense, I obviously still love this episode. It's one of the absolute funniest, most memorable, most epic, and most popular of the show, and for good reason. I said pretty much everything I wanted to about this episode in my season 2 video, and have nothing else to really add. It's just got a really fun concept of Squidward trying to put together a marching band to beat his rival. Every joke works. There's a really slow build-up to one of the most amazing and satisfying endings of the show. Sweet Victory is one of the best songs the show has ever put out, and I can connect to this episode a little bit being in a marching band. And all these things are great, and they do make it one of the best episodes of the show, which is why I love it, but I don't love it as much as some others, because I find the rest of this list just a bit more interesting, and the next episode is a prime example of this. This is the most experimental episode of the show, and one that I find the most fascinating to watch. I love the concept, and just how much they do with it. We get to see such fun looks into the future, the past, and everything in between. And I mean, everything. The nowhere scene is still one of the weirdest in SpongeBob history, and one of my personal favorites. But as I said in my original video, this episode is still a Squidward character study episode at heart, and a pretty interesting one at that, using the time travel plot and its twists and turns to show who he is as a person, what he really wants out of life, and what is tragically and hilariously possible for him to achieve, even going to literal nowhere to achieve what he thinks he wants. That being getting rid of SpongeBob and Patrick, and if that is worth it or not. And the fact that certain scenes parallel each other, which is used to make the episode even stranger and going further with showing the contrast of the different time periods and Squidward's personality, is what makes this episode so complete and one of the best of the series. But this is not one of the funnier episodes on the list. It is really funny, but it is mostly here for just how interesting of an episode for such a simple show like SpongeBob and how far it goes with its concept, which is why it got beaten out by quite a few other episodes on this list that I just think are funnier and I enjoy watching more for that reason. But damn, this episode goes a long way with its concept and is truly a masterpiece for what it tries to achieve in a show like SpongeBob. But comedy sometimes wins out. The fact that Chocolate with Nuts didn't make my top 5 blows my mind. But I will talk about that a bit more later on, because it's more, how do I put this, important when we actually do get to that number 1 spot. This episode, though, is a masterpiece of comedy. Every joke not only lands perfectly, but they're all some of the best, most memorable of the show. Every scene is great. Every character and little moment is fantastic and serves to make this episode the best it could possibly be. Even ignoring the big ones, like my channel name, even smaller ones get the biggest laugh and are so well used. But the banter and the character work between SpongeBob and Patrick is what makes this one of the best. It's the best character work between them from the entire show, hands down. But with all these elements, it allows them to tell some of the most creative jokes on top of that. I love how whether they succeed or not at their goal of selling chocolate bars, it's all kind of irrelevant, and they're sort of given a win at the end. You're watching because you want to see what new joke or new character will come up next, because you want to see what crazy shenanigans SpongeBob and Patrick will find them in. And that's really awesome. And it's a very high praise I can give to this episode, because it's just so great for that reason. But the reason it didn't crack the top 5, or at least the more simple reason I'll talk about right now, is that there are other episodes that just mean more to me. And to hint at something later, there is another episode that I think kind of steals this one's thunder and makes it a bit less important for that reason, even if I do truly love it. But there is an episode that is more important to me that directly did top it, and it also topped it on my season 3 list, so let's get into that. Just cracking the top 5 was a surprise choice for sure, just as it was on my season 3 list. Once again, while I think this episode is incredibly funny and can go toe-to-toe with Chocolate with Nuts in that department, the reason why it's so high is just that this story is actually really good for how weird it is, and how the episode really conveys the feeling of having to stay inside for very long periods of time while being content with it, even if it looks very weird to some people on the outside, to be very blunt. It just shows this off so well, and it leads to one of the strangest episodes for the weird twists and turns this story takes. SpongeBob spends the entire episode inside, and Sandy and Patrick try to get him to come outside, and all the little weird moments that it leads to are so funny. They get so many jokes out of it, and they all land. But that's not what makes this episode as good as it does. It makes it a very funny, enjoyable episode, and it's very entertaining for that reason, but I can, strangely enough, connect to this episode. And that's what I think ends up making it so amazing and landed it very high on this list. 'Cause at one point, I did have the same feeling that was conveyed in this episode through just staying in one place for a very long time, even if this situation in the episode is super overblown and cartoony. So that's why this episode sticks with me, because at one point I could connect with it in some way. Even if, had I made this list a couple years back, it probably wouldn't have made it. The fact that I do connect with it in that way from past experiences is why it's so high. But even with all that said, and how this episode shows off such an interesting topic in just a weird, wacky way with so many funny jokes and just the most ridiculous but stupid and hilarious ending that proves the point that the episode is trying to show off, there are still 4 that I think top it. Coming off of the Christmas season, I rewatched this episode, as I do yearly, and wouldn't you know it, it's still one of my favorites. This is just one of the best SpongeBob specials, and easily the best of seasons 1 through 3. It takes this world and characters and flawlessly puts them into the 22-minute format, which this show constantly struggles with, including in seasons 1 through 3. All 3 of the season 3 specials had a hard time with this, and this episode does it amazingly. The patchy segments here really help the episode pacing-wise, when they usually mess up the episode in other ones, while also being very funny here. There's so much to love about this one, and I'm not going to go over all the reasons again. I did a pretty good job in my season 2 list, but I'll say the biggest reason why this episode is so high up is because the atmosphere and presentation is great. It's just such a fun episode to watch for all its atmosphere and music. It really puts you in the Christmas spirit and is truly one of Nickelodeon's best Christmas specials for this reason. The other reason it's this high on the list is that I love this story. It fits the characters so well, and I love what it shows off about both SpongeBob and Squidward. It's just such an interesting showcase of their characters and what they truly want out of these events. And that's really cool to see from an episode of SpongeBob. Well, I don't think that this episode is really that deep at all, and I shouldn't have gone that far when praising this episode last time. The fact that our characters are this interesting here, and it shows off a lot about them through this event, while also just being the full package in 22 minutes to boot, only shows how great it is. But you're getting more out of it because it's double length, and it's just so good. And yeah, this still wasn't enough to beat out the best from the first 3 seasons, but it is such a complete package that has everything that made the first 3 seasons great at its best, with Christmassy flavor wrapped in an extra large bow. So what's not to love? But with all that said, it did not beat out the top 3, and that top 3, as you may have already known, are the best from each of their respective seasons. So you're probably wondering how I'm gonna rank them. So let's get into it. Picking my number 1 was difficult out of the 3 choices that were the best of their respected seasons. Even though I already stated previously what my favorite was, I still went back and re-examined what my favorite truly is. And there were points while making this list where all 3 ended up on top at one point. But in its finalized version, Pizza Delivery ended up here. But I must say again, I'm stunned this episode made it this far, because me and it have a weird history. I did used to think this one was overrated until rewatching it for my season 1 list, where it finally landed at the spot it deserved, number 1 on that list. Because this really is just flawless. It's got a perfect plot, which leads to one of the best set of jokes, the best showcase of SpongeBob and Squidward's character dynamic in the show, and so much more. There's so many classic moments to boot as well, and this all leads to one of the best twists the show has ever had, and one of the best endings. The episode does a really good job making you get into this story while still enjoying all these gags, that the ending feels very earned because of all that. And the slower, more story-driven, but also more blunt to the point, gag-driven aspects of Season 1 are what really makes this work. The episode would not be as good in these departments if it were made in the other 2 seasons. I put the least amount of Season 1 episodes on this list because I enjoyed a lot of Season 2 and 3 episodes more, and sadly that does apply for the absolute best episode as well. But Season 1 had a very unique style and flavor, at least compared to the other 2 seasons, giving us some of the most creative, but also simple episodes of the show, in the best possible way, because, simply put it was a 90s Nicktoon. And while the other 2 seasons have a more distinct flavor as a show overall, when Season 1 gets it right, using its 90s Nicktoon style and its simplicity and creative aspects perfectly, and at its best in this episode. Even if there are funnier episodes and ones that are admittedly more ambitious, there are very few episodes as perfect and well-rounded as this one. Also, there's not a lot of other episodes that are put together quite as well. It is truly a masterpiece. But after a lot of debate, I had to admit this was the one out of the 3 I get the least out of watching. Don't get me wrong, this episode means the world to me, and I was rooting for it to land at number 1, but the next 2 just connect with me more, or mean much more to me for very different reasons. So, which of them won out? Well, I love every episode on my top 10. This is the one I wanted to be number 1 because it would have been such a surprising choice, and a very oddball one at that. For those of you who haven't watched my Season 2 list, yes, Procrastination is my favorite Season 2 episode above more popular choices. My relationship with it is kind of the exact opposite of the one I have with pizza delivery. No one ever really talks about this one for being anything particularly special. Well, I've always loved it, and on rewatch, decided it was my favorite of Season 2. And very close to being my favorite overall of the first 3 seasons. There is not another episode in this show I connected to as much as this one, or that I find as interesting from a presentation standpoint than this one as well. This is the best showcase of procrastination I've ever seen, and goes so far with its concept to tell so many creative jokes and keeps you guessing with what SpongeBob will do next to procrastinate. And the twists and turns the plot takes are great and are really used to prove the point about how bad SpongeBob's procrastination is, but how in the end he is able to pull through and get his job done, and how none of it ends up mattering in the end. I've already talked about how the ending is really clever and plays into how negative SpongeBob's procrastination is, but I have to reiterate how this episode chooses to show procrastination off is really clever and relatable, and the ending plays into this in such an interesting way, along with the twists that keep the episode interesting and just cool to watch. It's such an engaging episode for this reason. But the big thing that makes this episode one of the best is just how relatable it is, and how well it shows off procrastination for anyone who has ever procrastinated while doing schoolwork or other things. Very few episodes of SpongeBob are able to tackle an abstract concept like this so well, but also in such a creative way with so much hilarious stuff happening. With this plot and the twists and turns it takes, it makes it one of the most rewatchable and engaging episodes of the show. But if you've seen my season 2 list, you know all of this already. So this episode is very unique and connects with me in a lot of different ways for just how interesting it is. But why isn't it number 1? It would have been a great twist in a general sense from what people would expect. But, as I've said in the past, sometimes the most popular episode is the one that wins out. Or in this case, one of the most popular episodes. And here, that is definitely true. Even for how interesting this episode is, SpongeBob is a comedy show. And in the end, comedy wins out. To the surprise of absolutely no one, this is still my favorite episode of SpongeBob seasons 1 through 3, because it is the funniest and most creative, even if I don't think it's like the most interesting or unique episode. But even still, the comedy is really why it's here. And I'll admit, something kind of interesting, that if this episode didn't exist, Chocolate with Nuts probably would have taken this spot. The fact that this episode exists, and I think is a little funnier and more unique, did knock that one down a bit on the list, making me put other episodes I found more interesting or connected with me more higher, because they're both the funniest 2 of the series, and both the best of season 3, which is the funniest season. The fact that this episode exists, however, does make me want to come back to that one less, just because this episode fills a really specific niche for me that Chocolate with Nuts would fill otherwise. It does make me want to come back to this more, and some other episodes more as well, over Chocolate with Nuts, like I Had an Accident, even if Chocolate with Nuts is definitely funnier than that episode. This segment is not to crap on Chocolate with Nuts, because I love that episode and I've already given it praise on this list. But it is to prove the point that all these episodes were very close in quality, and very weird things ended up being the deciding factor between what would land where. But getting back to the actual episode at hand, this is one of the funniest episodes I've ever seen. I really don't have anything new to say on it. It's just great because it's amazingly funny, and that's why it works. It's just an interesting concept, done extremely well. Every joke around this training video works. The plot of SpongeBob wanting to make a Krabby Patty is what pulls it all together, and what makes it very cohesive, but also just leads to all these great jokes. Every individual scene, every individual character gets their time to shine, and it's all great. It is truly an accomplishment of the show. So yeah, I do feel confident standing by what I've said in the past, and will continue saying into the future, that Krusty Krab training video is my favorite episode of SpongeBob seasons 1 through 3. So I'm gonna outro this video in the way I usually do, instead of using this new format for the video, just cause this video took long enough to come out as it is, and I really want to get it done. So this outro was made very quickly last second. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you've supported me throughout this year, even in the dry spots where I didn't make any videos, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope the different things I tried to do turned out well and led to some good content. I hope to produce more videos in the new year, and maybe post them more consistently. My schedule is still pretty crazy, but I'm trying to work around that, and after being gone so long, realized I really just want to make some more videos. So, on that note, I'm gonna skip the normal way I outro this video and not go over the usual stuff. If you want to support this channel, and all the ways you can do that. But I want to end this video off by talking about some plans in the upcoming future. So for new content coming out in the new year, I'm going to list off a few things that are definitely going to happen and a few ideas I have that might happen. For the stuff that definitely is going to happen, I'm still going to make more lists in any way I need to around editing and my schedule. But I am still going to make them because I love doing it. So the Hey Arnold worst of seasons 1 through 3 will come out soon, and the Avatar Season 2 list is something I'm hoping to make soon as well. Even though the first Avatar video I made didn't do as great as other videos, I still love that show, and the Season 2 list is gonna be something very different. So I'm looking forward to whenever that comes out. And I'm gonna do more lists in the future, obviously. Once I'm done with the Hey Arnold Seasons 1 through 3 worst list, I'm gonna do a best list, like I did in this video for SpongeBob. And also in the future, I hope to talk about Hey Arnold Seasons 4 for the worst and best episodes in that season, along with SpongeBob Season 4 for the worst and best episodes in that one. And on top of that, next summer, and I'm waiting this long to make that video for reasons I'll explain when I get there, but next summer I will be releasing the next Simpsons list, the best of season 7, and hopefully I will cover more shows in this list format in the future. For videos that may be coming out, or just video ideas that I have, I am hoping to do some individual episode reviews. I know that I said that last year and it didn't end up coming out, and maybe none will come out this year either, but I hope that it ends up happening because I do have some interesting ideas. But on that note, I do have to say the Homer's Night Out review is not coming out because I want to put it in a much bigger video that will come out on my 2nd year anniversary of this channel. So you can consider this SpongeBob video a good celebration of my 1st year and my 1st full year of doing this channel, because SpongeBob has been a very important show to my channel, and some of the little growth I've seen has been from my SpongeBob videos. Especially my SpongeBob Seasons 1 through 3 worst list, which has done so well, and I'm so glad because I'm just very proud of how that video turned out. So, yeah, I will still try to do individual episode reviews in the upcoming year, and I'm hoping to do some of not only episodes of seasons I've talked about, but also just random seasons of television. It's gonna be interesting, and I'm gonna try to do it. And the other thing I'm thinking about doing is individual season reviews of different shows. This will allow me to talk about much more episodes than I do in my list videos for just how long those videos take. So yeah, that's all the stuff I want to do. I am currently back making videos, and I don't know how long it'll take me for new ones to come out, but I am happy to start making videos again because I have many plans, and I hope that at least some of them happen in the new year because I love doing this, and I just can't wait to make more. And with all that said, once again, thank you for a good year on YouTube of me making videos, and if you enjoyed them, thank you so much, and I look forward to making more in the new year. Happy New Year's, everybody.